Did you know that passive fixed income ETFs only capture about 50% of the U.S. public bond market? But with JP Morgan Asset Management's active fixed income ETFs, we can help you capture 100% of the U.S. public bond market and explore twice as many opportunities. Visit jpmorgan.com/getactive to learn more. JP Morgan Asset Management is the brand name for the asset management business of JP Morgan Chase & Co. and its affiliates worldwide. This communication is issued by JP Morgan Distribution Services Incorporated, member of FINRA.
Introducing the all-new Adobe Acrobat Studio, now with AI-powered PDF spaces. Do more with PDFs than you ever thought possible. Need AI to turn 100 pages of market research into 5 insights with a click? Do that with Acrobat. Need templates for a sales proposal that'll close that deal? Do that with Acrobat. Need an AI specialist to tailor the tone of your market report to sound real smart in real time? Do that with the all-new Adobe Acrobat Studio. Learn more at adobe.com/do-that with Acrobat.
Your next product launch is coming fast. Don't let billing slow you down. Legacy systems can't handle usage-based billing. That means your team is stuck gluing code together, piecing through spreadsheets, and running ad hoc queries just to figure out what to bill. With Metronome, you can roll out new pricing in minutes instead of months, whether it's usage-based, seat-based, or a hybrid model. Visit metronome.com to see how companies like OpenAI and Anthropic launch billing as fast as they launch products. That's metronome.com.
Bloomberg Audio Studios. Podcasts, radio, news.
This is a breaking news update from Bloomberg. Instant reaction and analysis from our 3,000 journalists and analysts around the world.
Let's bring in Bloomberg's politics contributor, Jeanne Sheehan-Zaino. Jeanne is also Democracy Visiting Fellow at Harvard Kennedy School's Ash Center. Jeanne, thank you for making time. I'm sure it's been a busy day for you. AP calling the mayor's race here in New York City for Zohran Mamdani. NBC earlier was talking about Democratic Rep Mikey Sherrill winning the governor's race in New Jersey. And we heard earlier in the evening from Abigail Spanberger, who is now the newly elected governor for the Commonwealth of Virginia. If you are a Republican this evening, what are you feeling?
Yeah, I mean, this is a big win for the Democrats. And you look at this margin, I'm only seeing about 75% in New York City. But Zohran Mamdani, I don't think many of us expected he could get over that 50%. I don't know if he'll stay there in the end, but that would be an enormous win for him. And any time we see this historically, where we see Democrats or Republicans winning all 3 of these major races in these off-year elections, it bodes very good for the party that's won in the next election, which would be the midterm. So Republicans, I think, have got to be thinking hard tonight about how they come back for the midterm. And one of the issues that has sort of dominated all of these very different races in very different areas, from Virginia to New Jersey to New York City, is the issue of affordability, of cost of living, and people's frustration with the economy. So I think for Republicans, that has to be a major concern and focus as they move forward.
Speaking with Jeanne Sheehan-Zaino, Bloomberg Politics contributor, on a night where we are learning from the Associated Press that Democrat Zohran Mamdani has won the race to be New York City's next mayor. You mentioned affordability being a key issue here, but the other thing that strikes me is the youth vote here, particularly in New York City, the way in which Mamdani was able to energize younger voters.
That's right. I don't think we've seen anything like it recently on the Democratic side. He is an absolutely a terrific candidate. He is appealing to so many of these young people who have been so frustrated, Doug, with the system as it is. And who have been looking for somebody to come in and to say that they have something new to offer. And so I think one of the things for the very frustrated moderate Democrats is that they were backwards looking with trying to push Andrew Cuomo out front. And so that is something that more moderate Democrats are going to have to think about, the establishment wing of the Democratic Party, if you will. But Zoran Mamdani, who doesn't have, we know, a lot of executive experience for sure, he ran an incredibly smart and strong campaign, well organized, well funded, and his message was particularly compelling to people in the city. And these turnout numbers, over 2.2 million New Yorkers turned out to vote, we're hearing now, those are incredibly historic numbers.
So, Jeanne, as he builds out his administration, would you expect him to move to the center and tap, let's say, commissioners or department heads that would be maybe a little bit more moderate in their thinking?
I think that is possible. And I'll tell you why. Number one, obviously, his acknowledgement of the police commissioner just before the last debate, I think, was a small sign of that. But today, for so long, he had not said where he was going to vote on these ballot initiatives. And after voting today, he came out and he said that he had voted yes in the same way that Andrew Cuomo had. And that left Curtis Sliwa as the one who had voted no. And I think that is another sign that we may underscore, because we don't know, see him moderate as he moves to fill in these very important positions that he has to fill. But one thing we do know about Mamdani, at least so far during the campaign, is that he is willing to think very carefully about what people are suggesting, to the criticisms that are coming his way. He's very open to that. And in the end, he seems, at least on the face of it right now, to be very honest about where he comes down. And so I think the yes on these three ballot initiatives is an inkling that maybe we'll see him moderate a little bit.
He alarmed some of Wall Street, much of Wall Street, by vowing to tax the rich. Now, we know the dance here when it comes to tax policy in New York City is very much a dance with the governor. Can you imagine a partnership? I know that the governor of New York State, Kathy Hochul, did endorse Mamdani, but I'm wondering about how you imagine their partnership going forward.
It's going to be very interesting now with a win, and particularly, Doug, if he is able to pull through this mandate, which for me means he's got to get over 50%. We've got Hochul now coming into a very tough election. She's going to be primaried by her lieutenant governor. She's facing a what we think will be a very strong campaign by Elise Stefanik. She is going to need Mamdani. And I think that is going to give Mamdani a lot of ability to move forward on some of what he has promised. But as we know, the governor also is got to have to deal with the assembly and the Senate up there. And so she's not going to be able to give him everything he wants. But I do think that relationship is going to be really important going forward. I know there's a lot of talk right now that his win is going to make it very hard for her to pull out a win. And I think there could be some truth to that. But I also think that she is going to try very hard to work with him so that a lot of this energy and focus that he has had at the polls comes her way.
Speaking with Bloomberg's politics contributor Jeanne Sheehan-Zaino about what is now being called as a victory for Democrat Zoran Mamdani. He has won the mayor's race in New York City. Jeanne, when it comes to the presence of Donald Trump in this campaign, particularly in the New York City's mayor's race, could he really be a problem for Mamdani with a threat of withholding federal funds?
I think he can. I think that Zoran Mamdani came out today and talked a little bit about how he would confront that. And certainly the courts are the major way in which you'd confront it. We've also heard talk that potentially you fight fire with fire and you withhold some of New York's incredibly large tax base. So I think we are setting up for a fight. But I do think that Donald Trump's role in all of this is very perplexing. I don't know in what universe Donald Trump thought that his endorsement of Cuomo's, coupled with Elon Musk's and Stephen Miller's, would help Cuomo or help the Republicans. So, it's almost to me as if he helped Mamdani. I mean, Mamdani jumped on those right away and used it to his advantage. So it was a very strange way in which he tried to enter this race. He sort of loomed over it. The last I looked on Truth Social, he hasn't said much about what has been so far at least, a very difficult night for Republicans. I take him at his word when he says he's going to try to take action against the city of New York. But I also think for all the frustration that New Yorkers who don't welcome Mamdani feel, I think they're not going to feel much love for Donald Trump either if he tries to impact with the millions or billions of dollars he's talked about withholding from New York. I think he'd have a big fight on his hands.
So we have Democrat Zohran Mamdani winning the mayor's race in New York City. We have Democratic Rep Mikey Sherrill winning the governor's race in New Jersey. Abigail Spanberger being elected the first female governor of the Commonwealth of Virginia. You were mentioning a moment ago, Jeanne, that this could be kind of a harbinger of what's to come in the off-term elections next year. Now, tonight in California, voters there are going to decide on Proposition 50. Now, we know that this measure would redraw the state's congressional maps to favor Democrats. This is part of a broader story here when it comes to the national battle on redistricting. How do you see this playing out going forward?
It looks, if we believe the polls, and the turnout there, Doug, has been incredible. I mean, I'm looking at over a third of the electorate turning out for a proposition in an off-year election is absolutely incredible. And if the polls are to be believed, it looks like Gavin Newsom and those in favor of Prop 50 are going to pass it. And that means that Democrats will have enough seats likely in California to counter the gains that Trump and Abbott made by redistricting in Texas. I think the redistricting or mid-decade redistricting war will continue as other states are sort of pushed and pulled to get involved. Virginia now, for instance, that we have a Democratic governor. Indiana, the vice president was just out there trying to compel them to move forward. But this is a big blow to Donald Trump. And I think when Gavin Newsom first proposed the idea, I think many of us, I know myself, was very skeptical that he could do this in a way that wouldn't alienate so many Democrats like myself who are opposed to this kind of mid-decade redistricting. But he did it. It looks like at least he has done it. And he has made the case that we need to fight fire with fire. This is temporary. And it is to confront what is happening on the Republican side. So I do think that this countering in California is setting an example for the rest of the blue states. And if they're able to, I think we will see at least some of them, like I mentioned, Virginia, following suit. And this bodes, again, very badly for Donald Trump. There's only one reason he tried to do this in Texas, is because he is very concerned about how this midterm is going to turn out, particularly in the House. If Democrats take the House, everything he wants to do that requires congressional approval is going to be stalled, and he'll be the subject of enormous oversight investigation.
Jeanne, thank you so very much. It's always a pleasure. Jeanne Sheehan-Zaino there, Bloomberg Politics contributor. Jeanne is also democracy visiting fellow at Harvard Kennedy School's Ash Center, joining us here for special coverage of the 2025 election. And just to give you an update on this Proposition 50 vote that was happening today in California, the measure redrawing the state's congressional maps in favor of Democrats, it has passed. Let's bring in Bloomberg Government reporter Greg Giroux, who joins us from just outside Washington. Greg, let me get your reaction to the passage of Prop 50.
Yeah, well, it's one of maybe several capstones for Democrats, and what's a great night for them politically. It puts them formally into the redistricting, re-redistricting wars mid-decade that was prompted by Donald Trump and Texas Republicans who redrew their map to elect up to 5 more Republicans in that state. The California map, now that's been enacted, could deliver up to 5 Democratic seats to that party, therefore offsetting the Texas Republican map. So a big win for California Democrats. It'll be interesting to see what at-risk Republicans do. Do they run for re-election? Do they retire? And then we have to see what other states do. Some other Republican-leaning states are trying to enact maps. They did so in North Carolina and Missouri, which could net them one additional seat. Some other states are very much in play. But what California is shown us by passing Proposition 50 is that Democrats will significantly eat into the big margins that Republicans expected they would have had in a broader kind of war to redraw congressional districts to partisan advantage.
Let's talk a little bit about New York City politics, Greg. We are moments away from hearing from Mayor-elect Zoran Mamdani, who has won the race this evening. We'll be going to the Paramount Theater in Brooklyn to hear from Mr. Mamdani. It was interesting today that according to the Board of Elections, the turnout in this election here in New York City drew the highest number of voters since 1969. And Greg, you and I were speaking earlier about the degree to which there has been this tremendous amount of enthusiasm from younger voters.
Yeah, there really has. I was struck by one of the many things that I was struck by tonight is just how much the turnout surged in New York City. More than 2 million votes cast, compared to about 1.1 million in the 2021 race between Eric Adams and Curtis Sliwa. So it's clear that Mamdani has certainly energized a larger swath of the electorate than Adams did in 2021. I'm just struck by kind of the turnout increase in New York City, and then kind of what happens next, and to what extent Mamdani becomes a top spokesperson maybe for the Democratic Party. One thing I have noticed on election night tonight is from the Republican Party groups. They have obviously downplayed or ignored their big losses in Virginia and New Jersey, and they have actually focused a lot of their attention on Mamdani, and they're trying to link Democratic candidates to the new New York City mayor-elect. I don't know how many voters outside of New York City will kind of respond to that, but it's clear that Republicans are definitely trying to link Democratic candidates in competitive states and districts to the New York City mayor-elect Mamdani.
So remind me of the dynamic that began to unfold between Zoran Mamdani and President Trump, and how this may impact Mamdani's ability to govern New York City.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see just kind of how he adjusts. I think the mayor-elect said just in the last 48 hours or so that he'd be willing to work with President Trump on things that would benefit New York City voters. So I think you'll start to make the mayor-elect will start to make some outreach and maybe extend a hand to some political adversaries. As Mario Cuomo once said, you campaign in poetry and you govern in prose, and the euphoria and the adrenaline of the campaign and the election will soon dissipate and give way to the hard realities of actual governing here. I think that's what one thing that Mamdani's going to have to face.
I'm sorry to interrupt there, but what about the dynamic between Mamdani and the current governor, Kathy Hochul, also a Democrat who is up for re-election next year?
Yeah, that'll be interesting to watch as well, because she has her own politics to think of. She is likely to face a serious opponent in most likely Congresswoman Elise Stefanik from the North Country. Hochul in 2022, kind of underperformed at the polls. She was won a full term in her own right by about 6 points against Lee Zeldin. But tonight's results, may give kind of a bit more morale boost for Democrats across the country, perhaps in New York State as well. But it was interesting to see what the dynamic will be between the governor and the mayor-elect. That's for sure.
So, what does the conventional wisdom say about whether the Democrats can continue this momentum as the battle heats up for control of Congress in next year's midterms? Yeah,
I think it's certainly tonight's results were certainly a morale-boosting election for Democrats and a gut punch to Republicans. More often than not, when one party wins the Virginia and New Jersey governor elections. The same party goes on to do well in the following year's U.S. House elections. And I think with the California Prop 50 passing tonight, that at least kind of cushions some of the the blow that Democrats have experienced with some new Republican maps. And I still think you have to rate the Democrats as more likely than not to win control of the House. They only need a net gain of 3 seats. Democratic officials, including Chuck Schumer and Kirsten Gillibrand, have also said tonight that this makes tonight's results show that the Senate is also in play. I think that's still a tougher lift for Democrats because they need a net gain of 4 seats to win control of the Senate. And most of the Senate seats at stake in the 2026 election are in very Republican states. However, it does give I think Democrats a morale boost, certainly a year after their very devastating losses for the presidency, the House and the Senate.
Most definitely, and I'm wondering if the intention was to kind of move toward the center, whether the Mamdani victory, given the fact that it's such a high-profile victory, would make that a bit more challenging.
Yeah, I think Republicans will certainly want to tie, and I think that's why we're seeing kind of Republican groups tonight trying to tie Democratic candidates to Mamdani and trying to paint Democrats as the Socialist Party, kind of reviving, kind of some of the messaging we've seen from Republican groups against Democrats in the 2024 election. I think we'll see more of that. We're starting to see kind of what kind of profile Mamdani will seek to have within kind of the broader Democratic Party. I think for the last 4 years, I don't know how many people knew who Mayor Eric Adams was or knew who Bill de Blasio was. But I think this victory certainly will garner a lot more nationwide attention than previous Democratic victories for New York City mayor.
Speaking with Bloomberg Government's Greg Giroux, joining us from just outside Washington, we are waiting for the appearance of Zohran Mamdani, the mayor-elect for New York City, winning by more than 50% of the votes tonight cast across the 5 boroughs, according to the Board of Elections. Among the city's 4.7 million active registered voters, over 2 million cast their ballots. We heard a short while ago a concession speech from former Governor Andrew Cuomo. Just to get your perspective on what may be in store for Mr. Cuomo next, do you have a sense, Greg, of where he may land going forward?
I really don't. I'm kind of at a loss there. I just this will be he seemed to narrow the gap in this race. I think he was, it was a very kind of incongruous situation where he was saying that he would be the one to stand up at Trump, but then he also accepted Trump's endorsement. And it looks like a lot of the Republican vote in New York City peeled away from Curtis Sliwa to back Cuomo. But I'm not sure what will be next for him. I don't know. And
of course, President Trump endorsing Cuomo in the last several days. Was that a surprise to you?
Maybe a formal endorsement. I think Trump had telegraphed that that Curtis Sliwa didn't really have a realistic chance to win the election, and that really the only way for Mamdani, who Trump obviously vociferously opposed, the only way for him to lose was to have perhaps a one-on-one race with Cuomo, or have at least as many Curtis Sliwa voters shift their allegiance to Cuomo. But as it turned out, that wasn't enough. It would have been interesting to see, even in a one-on-one race, presumably Mamdani would have won. It looks like he's just over a majority of the vote. It would have been interesting to see what would have happened if the Republicans had nominated a kind of a more mainstream, well-known candidate like, Congresswoman Malliotakis of Staten Island and Brooklyn. If that had been a one-on-one race against Mamdani, how that would have turned out, that's what we can only kind of speculate now.
And just in the interest of full disclosure, Michael Bloomberg endorsed Andrew Cuomo in the mayoral race. He also donated to the super PAC supporting Cuomo. Michael Bloomberg is, of course, founder and majority owner of Bloomberg LP, the parent company of Bloomberg Television and Radio. Speaking here with Bloomberg Government reporter Greg Giroux in Washington as we stand by to hear a victory speech from the mayor-elect of New York City, Zohran Mamdani. Will go live to the Paramount Paramount Theater in Brooklyn. Very quickly, Greg, if you were to summarize the gubernatorial races in both New Jersey and in Virginia, what's the key takeaway?
I think the key takeaway for me is the Democratic margins of victory more so than the Democratic wins. I think it was clear going in that Abigail Spanberger in Virginia was a clear favorite to win that election, and that Mikey Sherrill was probably going to win the governorship of New Jersey. But I am struck by their margins of victory as we speak. Spanberger, with about 95% of the vote in, is leading by more than 14 percentage points, which would be the largest margin of victory by a Democrat in a Virginia governor's election since 1961. And in New Jersey, as we spoke about earlier this evening, I think Sherrill's margin of victory, I think she exceeded expectations. What may have been a single-digit race is now turning out to be a double-digit decisive blowout. She is leading by more than 12 percentage points with, about 95% of the vote counted. And Sherrill had, unlike Spanberger, had to run with to succeed a term-limited two-term governor of her own party, Phil Murphy, who did not have the best approval rating. And Chitterelli was trying to run against so-called Trenton Democrats and trying to link Sherrill to Phil Murphy. But it looks like Sherrill is going to win very decisively by the double digits. And if with her win, that'll mark the first time also since 1961 that the same party has won 3 consecutive governor's elections in New Jersey. But bottom line, it was the margins for Democrats that stand out more so than the win.
Hiscox Small Business Insurance knows there is no business like your business. Across America, over 600,000 small businesses, from accountants and architects to photographers and yoga instructors, look to Hiscox Insurance for protection. Find flexible coverage that adapts to the needs of your small business with a fast, easy online quote at hiscox.com. That's HISCOX.com. There's no business like small business. Hiscox Small Business Insurance.
Wells Fargo has awarded $138 million in grants to nonprofits, supporting military and veterans with housing, small business, career transition, and more over the last 10 years. It's one of the many ways Wells Fargo seeks broad impact in communities. Wells Fargo, the bank of doing. Learn more at wellsfargo.com/say-do. Support includes contributions from Wells Fargo and Company and the Wells Fargo Foundation.
This is LeVar Arrington from Two Pros and a Cup of Joe.
The Toyota Tundra and Tacoma are designed to outlast and outlive, backed by Toyota's legendary reputation for reliability. So get in a Tundra with the available iForce Max Hybrid engine, delivering exceptional torque and towing capacity. Or check out a Tacoma with available off-road features like crawl control. It can take you beyond the trails. Toyota trucks are built to last year after year, mile after mile. So don't wait. Get yours today. Visit buyatoyota.com for deals and more. Toyota, let's go places.